After a cold night last night, we definitely got frost today. There's ice on these tables here. You can see it right here. It's like snow. Yeah, definitely got cold last night. I can feel the surface of the soil on some trees is a little frozen. So it's a good thing I had all my tropicals and sensitive trees put away.
11 days. 11 days.
11 days. 11 days. 11 days?
Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Just 11 days before the Toronto Bonsai Society's Fall Show and Sale. Today I'm going to be doing the final selection of the trees for the Toronto show, and I want to make sure each tree has a stand and an accent plant or a display that looks really nice. I'm going to clean off my table here, and this area will be like the show table, so I can mock up my display for each tree, the stand, the tree, and any accents that I have with the display. I've cleared off my display area, ideally to kind of match the Toronto show. They usually have black tablecloths and more of a lighter colored backdrop. I've kind of got the opposite. I've got a black backdrop and a lighter colored table. So it'll still give me a good impression of what the tree will look like as far as the display. So let's pick out tree number 1. The first tree I'll be picking for the show is my root over temple Ficus benjamina here. I only have one stand that fits this pot. That's the one I stained up with the tar. So let's bring it into the display area, set it up, and see how it looks. Here is the table. So I'll set it towards the back here. About there. Then I'll put the tree on top. All right, here goes the tree. I'll have to very, very carefully set this down. Make sure there's no sand or gravel underneath the pot. That'll scratch the finish. And here I go. Try and center it about there. It's close anyway. So that's the first time I've seen the tree on top of this stand with the stand stained darker. I'm looking at the display now. I think I've got kind of a space here in the canopy that hasn't filled out yet. It will. But I want to rotate the tree a bit. Right now you're looking at the temple kind of straight on. I think rotated gives it a little more interest, more of a three-dimensional look to it. That bare spot on the canopy rotates to the front and it looks much better. So I'll rotate it on the stand now. I think that looks more interesting. People will look at it and go, oh, what is it? Oh, it's like an old temple here. Maybe that's a little too far. I'll rotate it back a bit. Yeah, that looks better. Maybe even a little more. I think I had this rock out front. So let me try that. More like that. So yeah, that rotates it just enough. I think that looks good. Just enough that it's not flat onto the temple. Tree looks good in that position. Now, before I've just kind of oiled up the base, the terracotta pot. And on that test one, I took a terracotta pot and I gave it a light wipe of the tar. And I'm thinking of doing the same thing here. I think it'll just tie the stand and the pot together, hopefully perfectly. I'm going to give it a try. I mean, if worst came to worst, I could rub the finish off with some Varsol. And I don't think, it'll soak through the clay and attack the roots or anything. I'll make sure I rinse it with soap and water immediately after so it doesn't be any health hazard to the tree. I'm trying to think what I could do for an accent plant, something that would kind of match this tree. Tough decision. I'll have to look around and see what I have. I have a fern, but I think the fern overpowers the tree. The fern has a nice lush canopy. This tree is a little more sparse, and the two, they don't go together.
the fern is definitely overpowering, so I need something smaller or more simple. I have my Ficus Elastica that's in development. Kind of a simple, coarse tree that makes this one look more ramified and finer. I think it's a good combination together. I would have to stain up, make a little stand and stain it up so it would match the color of this stand. And I think the two go quite well together. I'm kind of leaning towards that. If I have some other possibilities, I'll try them out too, but it's kind of looking good together. Maybe I'll try the $50 challenge tree beside it, see what that looks like. There's a look at that combination. I think it's too complicated. It competes. Your eye doesn't know which tree to look at. This one's too feathery and miniature looking. Yeah, the two don't go together at all. So that ficus is still the top pick so far. Here's the tiger bark ficus beside it, and again, I think it's too complicated. It's too much. Your eye doesn't know which tree to look at. You want the focus on the main tree, and this just sort of complementing it, not overpowering it. So yeah, that tree's too interesting. Here's a look at my climbing aloe, which isn't really an aloe plant. Now this one does look pretty good with it. I think it's the pot color tones with the stand really, really nicely. Yeah, I think, am I liking this better than the little ficus? Maybe I am. There's something about it that just looks kind of cool. Maybe it's the sharp points of this foliage matches the sharp points on the leaves here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm liking those two together though. I have my cement Buddha figure, but I think that's too simple. You know, even if it was up a little higher, I think, yeah, I think it's just too simple. I could like plant something in the little pot here, which would give it a bit of a green touch. But it's a possibility. I should plant this anyway because I'm sure I could use this with some tropical tree in future. This is wet from the greenhouse. When it dries, you get more of that cement color. It's a little dark right now, but I mean, that would do. You could make that work, but I think the other two plants were stronger. I could display a stone beside it, but I think the stone looks lifeless. You know, you've got this lush tropical jungle theme going, and then you've got this lifeless stone here. If you had a stone with all kinds of moss in that, maybe, but definitely not a dry stone. It looks too arid. Doesn't match the theme. At the thrift store today, I picked up two of these tie figures, which are really nice. There's a crackle glaze on them. But I don't like it with this tree. I think my Frankenficus, it would suit it a lot better. It's got that same style that matches the pot. So I don't think it's the choice for this tree, but maybe in a future display with that Frankenficus. I have a miniature Angkor Wat temple made of marble here. That could be quite nice with the right ficus, sort of an accent. But I think this one, you know, I've got the two temples going, the larger scale one and the smaller scale one, and it doesn't work. It's just not right with this tree.
I'm going to have a look around on the benches to see if there's any other plants that could be a companion planting with this tree at the show. If I can't find any that would be suitable, it'll be between the other two choices. I couldn't find anything else that might be suitable with this tree, so it'll be between my climbing aloe or my Ficus Elastica. I think before I make the final decision, I should make a little stand to hold the accent plant that matches this one. Last night I stained up this stand, which is just made out of some old lumber that was lying around. It was all kind of gray, like barn board, and it turned out pretty nice with the tar, the roofing tar thinned, spread on the finish. I'll show you a look at that. Here's that stand. So this has been outside all summer. It was just like gray lumber. It was just an end cut from when I was doing the plant room, and I
I screwed 2 legs in the bottom, just wood screws. But after staining with the roofing tar, it comes out really nice. It's almost looks like that it's been burned and then sanded down. Now, it has lost a little of its luster, and I think what I need to do is oil it with linseed oil, and that'll bring out the luster of the wood once again. So I'll do that next. The reason I'm using linseed oil on here and not a lacquer or a urethane varnish is that when you spread the oil on, it soaks in, and then if you were to, scratch the surface of here, it doesn't leave like a big white scratchy mark. You don't notice it at all. So you can really scuff this surface up, put trees on it, slide them around, and it doesn't ruin the finish. If you have like a sanded and polished lacquer finish, you have to be very, very careful when you set the pot on that you don't move it, otherwise it scratches your finish. So I'm going to try the linseed oil, see if it brings out a bit of luster to this stand, this homemade stand, and then I'll have a look at it, and if I really like it, then I'll make a small stand for my accent plant, very similar to this. All right, I've got my linseed oil here, which is getting quite expensive in the stores. So I'm just going to put it on with a cloth, rub it in, and you don't need a whole lot. If you put too much on, it soaks in really deeply, and it takes like, not days to dry, but weeks to dry. So you have to kind of just put a little thin layer on. I'm using the same cloth I used to rub the tar on, kind of rub it down. So here I go. We'll see how it turns out. See if it just gives it a bit of a luster. It was looking a little kind of flat after the tar dried. It looked great when it was wet, but after it dried, it kind of lost a bit of its sheen. Okay. So I'll put an initial coating on the whole table. Once I've got that coating on, I'll let it tack up a bit and then rub it all dry. That way it won't take days to dry. Okay, I'll flip it over and do the underside. I don't really have to do the underside, but I don't know. Sometimes, it shows in that photographers get down low and you kind of see the feet on the pot and the underside of the tables, and if it's not kind of finished, sometimes it doesn't look good in the photo. Okay, I think that's good underneath. I'll just a little more on the top surface because it has soaked in quite well. And this board had a bit of a crack in it here, but better a stand than no stand at all. And it's made of wood. It's going to crack over the years, distort a bit. It is what it is. Sometimes, if you have an old tree and an old pot, you want an old looking stand underneath it. You don't want a brand new stand with an old tree and an old pot. It just looks funny. So you want everything to be cohesive. Okay, I think that's good. So my next step, I'm going to let that sit for maybe 5 minutes, and then I'll come in with a paper towel and rub it all down, getting rid of all the excess oil. Here's a look at the stand with the oiled finish on it. It's really quite beautiful. I've waited a few minutes, so I'm ready to wipe it down now. I've just got some used paper towels. You can use newspaper or whatever. You can see how it rubs a bit off, which is good. It kind of brings out the grain a bit. Yeah, that does a nice job. Looks really good too. Like the finish. And your wood, you can see here, this edge of the top piece wasn't perfect, so you just put that to the back. Or if you've got kind of a natural kind of freeform type pot, you might want that to the front, so you have kind of a rougher looking stand, not so finished. I think I have it all rubbed down now. I do. Okay, so there's the stand. Looking quite nice. So I'm very happy with that finish. Again, this was just an old, faded, gray looking piece of board. Depending on how new your wood is, it'll totally change the look when you put that tar on. So this old piece just absorbed the tar, so in very black. A newer piece of wood like this will probably, if I can grab it, something that's newer like this, the tar won't soak in as much and you'll get more of a wood grain showing. It'll be a lighter color. So we'll try it out. I'll make a stand, probably a square stand for my accent plants. See how it goes. I put the stand in the sun over here to cure the linseed oil, help dry it faster. So you can see the color, the luster of the wood here. It's just beautiful. It's like a beautiful, beautiful color. Goes from kind of black to a nice, rich kind of wood color. Yeah, it gives a really, really nice finish, and it looks very antique-ish. You know, all the defects in the wood turn black, and the edges and that. Yeah, it looks really good. And then, you know, as this gets scuffed up over the years, it'll just keep getting better. Get a little more patina to it. Very nice. Now, I have this little three-legged stool here that may work as the table for my accent plant. I'd forgotten about this, but instead of making a square one, maybe this one will do. So let's bring it over here and see how the accent plants sit on it. So the first one, the climbing aloe, the stand is kind of the same size as the base of the pot. I don't think that looks very good. So let's take that off of there. Let's try the Ficus Elastica on it. Should be a better size. Yeah, it is. So I think, you know, because this table has sort of fancy legs and this one also has legs, I think this would be the better choice. This tree looks good with it. I can make the stand dark to match this stand. I think that's the solution. So let's start the finishing work on here. And you can see this is just also very faded from the sun, water stained. So it should look pretty good when I put the black roofing tar on it. The first step for this stand is just a little cleanup work, just to kind of smooth it out a bit. So I'll get out some sandpaper and just touch it up a bit. All right, here I go. The only sandpaper I have is 800 grit, which is really, really fine. Preferably for this, I would want 200 or something, but we'll see how it goes. I just want to kind of scuff it up, get any dirt off it or anything, or just clean up the edges a bit. There's a lot of variation in color on this little stand, so it might turn out quite interesting. I'm sure it'll look quite antique. Okay, that's kind of got it cleaned up. Let's put on the tar now. All right, I've got my cardboard down to kind of protect my workbench a bit here. So here I go. Here goes with the black. And this is roof sealant, foundation sealant, the kind of tar I buy. And I thin it about 50%. So I just use Varsol with it. And it thins it down, you paint it on, and rub it off. You can see it's really soaking into the end grain. So the end grain will turn out quite black. Other areas will be quite light. So I'll flip that over and do the underside. Do the bottom of the feet too, or the legs. Give this old stool some new life, or this old little stand. I don't know what it originally was, but I just got it at the thrift store. I'm always looking at That's stuff at the thrift store. And the more junk you have lying around, the more things you have to choose from when it comes to bonsai shows. Okay, so that's coated in tar. Next step is to rub it down.
To rub it down, I'll use the same old tarry old cloth here. And I just rub all the excess off. And it should bring out a bit of wood color. It won't be totally black. Looks like a little miniature butcher's block or something. I think it was. It looks like there's all kinds of knife marks in it, so maybe it was like a little cheese board or something. I don't know. It's an accent plant stand now. Okay, so that's rubbed down now. I'm just going to get the paper towel and give it another wipe because it's quite dark. I just want to rub it down a bit more. Get a little more of the black off. I want it to kind of tone with the, you know, the large stand, the one that Matt made, which is just awesome. Okay, let's take it over into the sunshine now and have a look at it and see if there's any wood color showing. All right, here it is in the sunshine. So you can see it against the other stand. So you can see there is a lot of wood color coming through. On the end grain, it's very dark. Yeah, it has a nice coloring to it. So I think that'll just be perfect. I think it's just fantastic. So the next step is to put the linseed oil on here after this dries a bit. So I'll let it sit in the sun here this afternoon. Let it dry a bit and then I'll put the linseed oil on. Here is a look at the display now with the accent plant and the ficus. So I think the little stand here matches nicely with the main stand. It's a very, very similar tone, color, and everything. So I think that's a successful 2-point display. 1 being the main tree, 2 being the little accent plant. And I think that's good for this show. Now, the last thing I want to do is put the black on the pot here, just to dress it up a bit. I think it needs a bit of pizzazz, and I'll use a very thin coat, not as thick as I put on the stool here. I'll thin it down quite a bit, so it's just sort of like a color glaze around the pot. So let's do that now, see how it looks. I've placed a piece of wood on the turntable here so I can set the pot on top of here for the finishing work. All right. All right, here I go. I'm going to begin this glazing procedure. Adding a tonal color to the pot. Not sure how this is going to work. Maybe I'll start at the back here. Just in case it messes up or something. Oh, it's actually quite nice. It's a good consistency. It's just giving it a nice subtle coloring to the pot. Yeah, I'm liking it. Just going all the way around. I think it's going to look good. I think it'll just add something, a special touch that'll just make the pot match everything perfectly.
Now I'm just checking up top, make sure I got the lip of the pot here. I guess I can do that with the rag. A little more precise. Okay, here I go. I'm just going to spread it up to the top, make sure I get all the terracotta here. I think this is going to be nice. I think it's going to be really subtle, just to add a pleasing color to the pot, so it doesn't look like raw terracotta. Which this pot had a lot of nice patina on it anyway. It was a pretty cool pot. Okay, so I've got it all around the rim there. Now I'm wondering, it's looking pretty good the way it is. I'm getting like the darker as it runs down the pot. Yeah, I don't think I have to touch it with the rag at all. It's looking really, really good. Natural kind of shadows down there. So I'm just going to leave that, let it dry, and that will be that. There is a bit of a funny streak here. Maybe I better touch that up. It's very, very subtle. I think it's in the pot itself. Maybe I better fix that. There we go. Yeah, that's working well, just letting it naturally fall down. So that's it. It's just got a very, very subtle shade to it now, which gives it a bit of a luster. And again, I'll put the linseed oil on here to kind of bring out the color a bit after it dries. So I think I'll put it in the sun also, let it dry for the afternoon. I can't touch it yet. I better let it tack up here because I don't want fingerprints on it. Yeah, so I better just leave it here for now. Here's a close-up look at the color effect in the pot. So I think it's very, very nice. Dark underneath on the lip. Just makes the bottom kind of disappear. It brings out the clay more. Like you can see all the tones of the clay there. It just looks beautiful. It's like, it just really highlights the patina that was already there. Very, very nice. I'm happy with that. And it's very, very subtle. So just perfect. I can't show you the finished display for the root over temple ficus because everything's kind of drying. So at the start of the next video, I'll show you the display all set up here. And we'll take a final look at it and a critique, see if it's all working together, if maybe it's not. So I'm going to pick out the next tree for the Toronto show, and this will be featured in the next video. So tree number 2 will be the Frankenficus. It's the kind of tree, it'll just keep getting better over the years, but I think it has a lot of good qualities. I think it'll look quite nice in the show. I really am liking the trunk and the root base, and I think with, you know, a nice stand under it, I think it looks quite beautiful. It's always hard to decide, you know, when to put a tree in a show, and this, I mean, if I waited another year, it would look better. If I waited 2 years from now, it would look even better. But I think, you know, they don't get a lot of tropical trees in the Toronto show, so I think this is a good example of a Ficus benjamina. It's got a story behind it, tragedy, recovery. So I think that's going to be the next tree for the show. It can be quite a process getting your tree ready for a show, getting the perfect pot for the tree, a nice stand to go beneath the pot, and then your display, either a 2 or a 3-point display. Yeah, it's quite a process and quite an artistic process, and it's a lot of fun. I think, you know, putting trees in shows, and it's good practice. I think, you know, you get better and better at displaying your trees the more you do it. So I encourage everyone to try out putting trees in a show. That is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.